What's happening, guys? Sam Adams here, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jampack Report today for August the 27th of 2019. Of course, for those that are brand new to the show, this is a daily gaming news podcast that keeps you up to date and informed on everything happening in the world of gaming. Of course, it is hosted on youtube.com/SamuelAdamsMedia, as well as podcast services around the world 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. If you did want to subscribe on your podcast services and or the YouTube channel itself. But what are we going to be talking about today? It looks like Overwatch is coming to the Nintendo Switch. That is, if an accessory that is Overwatch themed is to be believed. It was put up on Amazon, quickly taken down, and of course the internet has taken it by storm. Then Fortnite and Borderlands are colliding with the latest update. Ion Fury is retaining controversial in-game content after all. Cyberpunk 2077 has a smaller but denser world as compared to The Witcher 3. Speaking of rich, dense worlds, World of Warcraft Classic is out now, and last night on launch day, over 1 million people were watching the game on Twitch. Again, not playing. I was just watching on Twitch. And finally, Mario Kart Tour is coming very soon on September the 25th to Android and iOS, and of course you can pre-order the free game now. What a futuristic statement that was. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's top gaming news. First off, an Amazon listing may have just leaked Overwatch for the Nintendo Switch. Blizzard's team-based hero shooter Overwatch may be coming to Nintendo Switch. On Monday, accessory maker PowerA briefly listed a carrying case for the Switch through Amazon that was Overwatch-themed. The black and orange case featured the Overwatch logo, and the accessory noted that it was officially licensed by Nintendo and Blizzard Entertainment. The product listing was quickly removed from Amazon after being posted to Twitter and video game forum Reset Era. Blizzard has not officially announced a port of Overwatch for Switch, but it certainly wouldn't be out of the question. The company brought the Diablo III Eternal Collection to Switch in 2018, and Overwatch game director Jeff Kaplan addressed the possibility of a Switch port in 2017, sounding optimistic, but calling adapting the shooter for the portable challenging. "I'm loving the Switch," Kaplan said in a Reddit AMA session at the time. "My second favorite gaming platform of all time is the 3DS. Getting Overwatch on the Switch is very challenging for us, but we are always open-minded about exploring possible platforms. With rumors of an impending Nintendo Direct presentation and BlizzCon 2019 coming in November, we will find out soon enough if this is more than just a strange coincidence." And of course, here are some of the pictures of the aforementioned Nintendo Switch case. And I would say this is probably not just a collaboration between Blizzard and Nintendo. You don't just say, "Hey man, I love Overwatch so much, I think I'm going to get a Nintendo Switch case for it." I think this game is pretty much confirmed to be on the way. And of course, with Jeff Kaplan back in 2017 saying that he would love to make the project happen, I don't see why it wouldn't. I think you are going to be hearing much more about this in the coming weeks, but on top of that, I think that maybe you could be seeing it launch, if not before BlizzCon, at BlizzCon. Right in time for the holiday season, because of course that's a pretty big game. Even in 2019, Overwatch still carries a lot of weight. It's still one of the main games a lot of people do flock to. And ironically, I kind of caught the itch last night. I was like, hey, let's go ahead and boot up Overwatch, because I haven't played the game probably in well over a year and a half, maybe. I haven't really gotten into it at all. And so I just booted up to see what the game was like in 2019. And I must say that considering all of the new tools that they have included in the game, considering the new content that has been added to the game, I personally am a big fan of where Overwatch is right now in 2019. I'm probably actually going to be playing more of it in the coming hours. I'll probably dive into it right after this podcast is finished. But overall, I'm glad to see it coming to the Nintendo Switch, if it is indeed coming to the Nintendo Switch, because I think it very well could be a pretty good fit. My big question, though, is how is this going to work in the world where crossplay is a pretty prevalent feature? I don't know that a competitive shooter like Overwatch is necessarily going to thrive whenever you put Switch players up against those that are even on PS4 and Xbox One, let alone on PC. That's a problem that is going to have to be addressed at some point relatively soon, if this is in fact going to be something that is happening. But if you did want to get Overwatch on the Nintendo Switch, I would say that you are going to be able to do that. Play it on the Nintendo Switch probably well before the end of 2019. But you know what you can play right now? Fortnite and Borderlands, the collision in the game. Of course, this is a pretty big deal, and it does reflect a bit of the collaboration going on between Epic and the guys behind the scenes of Borderlands 3. Fortnite's latest map warping rift has ripped a chunk out of Borderlands Pandora and dropped it in the Battle Royale. Patch 10.20 crossover lets you duke it out in the dusty battleground and also includes a bunch of themed challenges and cosmetics. If you truly despise yourself, you can even buy your very own claptrap. Like other rift zones, Pandora has its own quirks. If you are fighting in the new area, you'll be blessed with a regenerative shield that recharges after 4 seconds. Unfortunately, none of Borderlands' wild and exotic guns have made it over, and Pandora will be sticking around until September the 10th. In creative mode, you can use the new Pandora building set to create your own Borderlands arena, and it might feature in the Pandora block that's coming soon. The building set is accompanied by an approximately desolate map too. The patch also flings a new item into the mix, a handy shield bubble that you can cower underneath, and continues to tweak the mech. Last week, the Brute was defanged a bit, and now the mech's map icon will remain visible to everyone after a player hops inside it. That should make it easier to avoid, or, if you are feeling bold, hunt. A couple of weeks ago, James argued that Fortnite's mechs are good, actually, and it's a shame that once again, an interesting item that shakes up the game has been hit by nerfs. Balance sucks all the fun of the life out of the game, but at least they have not been vaulted yet. And of course, you can check out patch 10.2 right now live on the Fortnite servers. But this is a pretty cool piece of content because, again, the crossovers they do always blow me away. And I like the fact that they've added some cell shading into that specific portion of the map. They've added psychos into the game. They've added a ton of new content that really just reflects the creativity and the collaboration between the companies and, of course, the teams behind the scenes of Borderlands 3 and Epic Games. Now, that being said, Epic Games and Fortnite have a bit of a deeper relationship, Epic Games and the guys behind Borderlands 3 have a bit of a deep relationship, needless to say. But the fact that the game is going to be hosted on the Epic Games Store, of course, is a pretty big deal as well. I think they're trying to tap into that Fortnite player base that is, pretty much solely playing on the Fortnites, to be able to show them Borderlands 3, to be able to show them the art design, to be able to at least familiarize the player base with psychos. You could be seeing some crossover, and of course, whenever they do boot up the Epic Games launcher, there are going to be at least some traces of the fact that Borderlands 3 is available on that specific storefront, so who knows, you might actually get a couple of extra sales from this little collaboration here. But very cool to see. I like the Claptrap back bling. If you did want to give it a shot, check it out. You can dump tons and tons of money into the world of Fortnite if you do so choose, and of course, whenever you do dump that money in, it could get you some Borderlands swag, as the kids call it these days. But that is out now on the official Fortnite servers if you did want to dive in on the PS4, the Xbox One, the Switch, the PC, and mobile. I knew I was forgetting one, but regardless, out now until September the 10th. Now let's move on and talk about what's happening with Ion Fury, because Ion Fury is retaining controversial in-game content after all. So let's start with the original story. The developer and publisher of Ion Fury have walked back a decision made last week to remove homophobic content from their game. In a joint statement posted to the Steam community forum, developer Voidpoint and publisher 3D Realms said the following: "We have caused a recent controversy suggesting Ion Fury game content was to be censored. We will absolutely not be censoring Ion Fury or any of our other games now or in the future, including but not limited to by removing gags such as gaming's most controversial face wash. We do not support censorship of creative works of any kind and regret our initial decision to alter a sprite in the game instead of trusting our instincts. 3D Realms and Voidpoint stand together on this matter. Last but not least, please respect our need to keep our community forums clean from hateful messages, spam, and off-topic threads. We recognize our mistake and have received your message loud and clear." Specifically, the statement is referring to a bottle endgame that displays the word "Oh gay," a reference to Olay products. However, the game also includes a more specific homophobic slur written on a wall in a hidden developer room. I was going to say the homophobic slur because it was kind of a big deal, not that you need to know the context around it because you know what it is, but at the same time, I just didn't want to bring the hate and all of that good stuff. So if you do want to see what the homophobic slur is, many outlets are covering it, but regardless, we'll leave it out here. These messages were uncovered last week following an incident where developers were criticized for using ableist, transphobic, and sexist language in the game's official Discord channel, alongside jokes about social justice warriors and leftists. Following the criticisms, 3D Realms and Voidpoint issued a statement apologizing for both the remarks and the in-game language, saying that they would implement, there's a a word missing from the official article here, would implement a zero-tolerance policy for such language, implement mandatory sensitivity training, and donate $10,000 to the Trevor Project from the launch day proceeds. In addition, they promised to patch Ion Fury as soon as possible to remove the derogatory language. Members of Voidpoint's Ion Fury team have made sexist and transphobic comments and included homophobic language in Ion Fury, read the original statement. We recognize these statements are insensitive, unacceptable, and counterproductive to the causes of equality. We unequivocally apologize both for these comments and language as well as for any pain they have caused the gaming community, particularly women and members of the LGBTQ community. We take full responsibility for any damage that has been done to the relationships we have worked so hard to build. And of course, GamesIndustry.biz reached out for comment and they got some back. Here's the update. A series of tweets by the official Voidpoint Twitter account following the official statement this morning indicates that the homophobic slur in Ion Fury has been removed from the game. In response to a question about the slur, which was hidden in a developer room in the game, Voidpoint replied that it was a legitimate error made by a developer who doesn't even live in an English-speaking country. It wasn't a joke, political statement, or anything else. I asked him if it would be offensive in his country. He said no. I believe him. He removed it. Another tweet also pushed back against the company's PR statement from last week, saying that the PR company responsible added the entire extra sentence to our original apology statement that made tons of customers think we were censoring the whole game. Finally, another tweet confirmed that Voidpoint will still be donating to the Trevor Project as promised, and when asked for comment and clarification, 3D Realms sent over the following statement. We at 3D Realms spoke with Voidpoint today, and they reaffirmed their commitment to honoring their original statement, including the donation to the Trevor Project and sensitivity training. However, the soap bottle will not be removed. The use of the word F-bag, I suppose we'll just include that there, in an area that was inaccessible without hacking the game and was added by one developer without approval from anyone else was removed a few days ago. We once again apologize for this text as it does not reflect the values of 3D Realms or Voidpoint. Jokes at the expense of marginalized communities will not be present in future games published by 3D Realms. However, a portion of our community made it loud and clear they felt removing "oh gay" was censorship and should be protected by free speech. Voidpoint wanted to listen, and we respected this decision. And so this is a big, big mess. And I do want to say that if you look past the controversies here, if you look past the "okay" bottle and the derogatory statement that was made in a hidden developer room that I've seen reports could only be accessed through hacking the game, but that's even beside the point. The fact that it's in the game at all is pretty gross. If you look past all of that, Ion Fury is a good game at its heart. It brings the original feeling of like Doom. It brings that classic old school vibe. It brings those specific vibes back. And it's a very cool game aesthetically. I love the look of the game. But the entire promotion, the entire marketing side of the game has been surrounded by, number one, the fact that they were sued by Iron Maiden because of the look of the game, because originally I believe it was called what was it called? It wasn't Ion Fury. Ion Fury renamed. Ion Fury renamed. Yeah, it was Ion Maiden. That's what it was. Duh. So it was originally called Ion Maiden. It has that specific font that does denote some kind of Iron Maiden vibe. And so they took that, changed it to Ion Fury. That was all well and good. The lawsuit was dropped or satisfied, whatever you want to say. And we've all moved on from that. Now we have this. Let the game speak for itself. You don't have to include all of this derogatory stuff. Just make a good game. And of course, I understand the idea of free speech. I understand that the developers might have wanted to put this stuff in the game. And of course, here they are. They have. And that's all well and good. But at the same time, I think it really hurts the game in the long run whenever you are going against the grain so much in 2019 that you are offending people. You know, you're including this stuff. But hey, it's an artistic space. You know, whatever you want to include in your game, you can include in your game. Now, I've seen reports that the controversial stuff was included without anybody else being consulted beforehand. Controversial content was included by one specific person. I've seen that floating around on various online sources. It's just a really big mess right now, but ultimately, the original apology was all well and good. Now you've backtracked, and now you're kind of, ostracizing a certain portion of the community. But at the same time, This is probably actually going to pay off financially for Ion Fury because there's a big portion of the gaming community online, believe it or not, that doesn't necessarily support the social justice movement and that doesn't necessarily support the PCification, if you will, of a lot of the space these days. And so, more than likely, this is actually going to turn out all well and good for the developers, which is not necessarily the best outcome. That's where I'm going to leave that right there, because I'm one that is for acceptance and whatnot. Leave that as you will. But overall, interesting statement to say the least, and of course, a big mess for the PR team behind Ion Fury. I'm not jealous of their jobs this week, not one single bit. However, let's move on and talk about Cyberpunk 2077, because it has a smaller but denser world as compared to The Witcher 3. The overall size of Cyberpunk 2077's world may be smaller than that of The Witcher 3, but each area now packs a lot more content. Cyberpunk 2077's metropolitan world does away with the sparse approach to design seen in The Witcher 3. Developer CD Projekt Red is going for a denser, more crowded game as compared to Wild Hunt, even if it means cutting the overall size of the map. If you look at pure surface in terms of square kilometers, then Cyberpunk 2077 might even be a little bit smaller than The Witcher 3, but it's the density of the content, taking the world of The Witcher and squeezing it right in, deleting the wilderness between. Producer Richard Borzymowski, wow, that's a name, told Games Radar. Obviously, in The Witcher, we were an open world with vast lanes and forests in between smaller cities and larger cities like Novigrad, but in Cyberpunk 2077, we are set in Night City. It is an integral part of the setting. It's essentially a protagonist, if you want to call it that, so it has to be denser. It wouldn't give us the end effect we wanted to achieve if the city wouldn't be believable, so we packed it full of life. This is likely bolstered by the ability to enter buildings, which adds a new vertical layer to exploration rarely seen in Wild Hunt. This may, however, make it more challenging to navigate, but we won't be able to say for sure until we see it in action. And of course, later this week we are getting 15 minutes of new gameplay live from Warsaw of CD Projekt Red's big new game. But how does this all shake out? You know, does it all come out in the wash whenever we're saying Cyberpunk 2077 has a smaller but denser world? I think that's fantastic because The Witcher 3 was way too big. Now, I will say in the, of course, original statement, a little bit smaller, might even be a little bit smaller than The Witcher 3. This is going to be a negligible difference, especially when you compare the density of the two games, because for those that didn't play The Witcher 3, it was a desolate wasteland of nothingness, 9 times out of 10. Of course, there were big cities, there were small little towns, but in between there were these vast stretches of just absolutely nothing. Of course, there were a couple of small little, hidden messages here and there. You could find some things to do, some enemies to hunt, etc. But overwhelmingly, it was very empty. And I think you were going to be seeing that, especially whenever the textures are bumped down in the Nintendo Switch version of the game. It's going to be a very empty space a lot of the time when you're going in between a lot of big towns and small little cities, or vice versa. But overall, I think that Cyberpunk 2077 is still going to have a lot of stuff going for it, a lot of positive movement because of the fact that it is smaller, because there's just going to be so much more to do in Night City as compared to The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which in and of itself had tons to do, make no mistake about it. But this is going to be one of the biggest games of 2020 without a doubt, and I'm excited to see the brand new live stream content coming later this week. Of course, I'm a big fan of CD Projekt Red because they, number one, make good games, which is pretty foundational to the overall success level in 2019. And on top of that, they have handled the community really well. They treat their players with respect, and I like that. I respect that. And so therefore, we're going to be seeing what happens with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077 over the coming months. On top of that, coming soon, the game it is in 2020. What a strange Yoda-esque way to say that. But you know what's out right now? World of Warcraft Classic servers are live, and over 1 million people were watching World of Warcraft Classic on Twitch last night. After 2 years of anticipation, WoW Classic is finally live. Top streamers from every corner of Twitch are streaming it right now, resulting in an audience of over 1 million concurrent viewers and some seriously congested starter areas. As of this writing, the slavering Horde, and Alliance fans topped out at 1.1 million people. That's a colossal number for a single game on Twitch. For reference, Fortnite has recently been pulling between 100,000 and 200,000 concurrent viewers at any given moment. It's rare that even big esports events bring some kind of attention to a single game like this. Even more impressively, WoW Classic pulled in the majority of these viewers while streamers were waiting to be able to log in. For example, by the time he was able to join a server, popular WoW streamer Asmongold was already at more than 200,000 viewers. Other popular streamers like Sodapoppin and Shroud, the latter of whom hasn't traditionally been much of a WoW streamer, have attracted similar gargantuan gaggles of gawking spectators. Wow, Nathan Grayson, that was a sentence right there. Kudos to you. So too has Top WoW Guild Method, which is now hosting an event where various personalities and high-level players race to beat the world's first players to complete, or basically everything. Even individual streamers are racing to level up, and the reason for that is simple. They want to physically separate themselves from the rest of the pack. Servers, especially ones that popular streamers have joined, are absolutely slammed right now, with tangled body piles of players rolling Katamari like across the map and converging on quest givers and low-level enemies. It is comical to watch, but also frustrating, since enemies are having a hard time spawning quickly enough to keep up with demand, and the game is hitching and lagging in great heaving bursts. Meanwhile, players who haven't made it in yet are reporting hours-long server queue times. Granted, this is not entirely streamers' faults. A lot of people have been waiting a long time to return to Vanilla WoW's bore-filled fields. Still, despite technological improvements that are no doubt keeping the servers from plummeting off the internet altogether, it is worth noting that the original WoW, and by extension WoW Classic, was not designed with streamers and Discord and strictly regimented mega guilds in mind. Those things, for the most part, didn't come until later. It will be interesting then to see how streamers affect the 2004 Revival's delicate leveling ecosystem, not to mention if a relatively bare-bones MMO can hold up people's attention in the long run. When WoW first launched, its quest system was a revolutionary streamlining of the MMO formula, but much of the game's magic came from spontaneity in the absence of structured activity. Hours-long PvP struggles, awkward encounters in the Barrens, factions trying to storm each other's home cities, blood plagues accidentally killing everybody, and so on. But times have changed, and you can't just repeat something and have it feel spontaneous again. WoW Classic, much like Vanilla WoW before it, will live or die based on what people make of it. And so, number one, this was something I had never seen before in all of my years of Twitch. There were 1.1 million people at one point watching the game on Twitch, just simply watching it, and it is a re-release of a game from 2004 that looks like a game from 2004. But World of Warcraft is something that is always going to be one of the biggest focal points in gaming culture, because it is so foundational to where we are today. It is so foundational to the industry today. Whenever you think about what Twitch even is, you can't talk about the history of Twitch without focusing at least some portion on World of Warcraft. The game made Twitch what it is today. That's massive. That is incredibly important. It has an incredible amount of significance in the modern gaming space, even though it might have dribbled off in popularity over the past few years. Make no mistake, still one of the biggest games in the world, but it's not what it once was. Now, with this nostalgia-driven World of Warcraft Classic release, you have a resurgence of people getting subscriptions again. You have a resurgence of people watching the game again. And of course, tons of people that have moved on to follow trends and to be variety streamers such as Lyric, one of the biggest streamers on Twitch. Of course, originated in World of Warcraft, and so whenever you've got that original 2004 experience coming back, you expect these people to come back to it and bring their audiences with them, and that's exactly what we saw last night. Now, as of right now, let's see where we're at as far as the amount of people go. We have 532,000 people at 8:24 a.m. on Tuesday, August the 27th, and of course, Asmongold still well at over 100,000 viewers, starting 17 hours ago on stream, Soda at 54.6 thousand, Shroud at 31.2, tons and tons and tons of people. Of course, Tim the Tapman started 4 hours ago with a long stream going with 15.2 thousand. You've got a lot of people watching the WoW on the Twitch. But if you were curious as to what was going on in WoW Classic, a lot of people, a lot of queue times. I've seen them for upwards of 3 to 4 hours. It's a long time to wait for some WoW Classic, but you could do it too if you did want to dive in and see what all the hubbub was about. But if you don't, and you're more of a Mario Kart fan, that was a nice transition, wasn't it? Mario Kart Tour is coming to Android and iOS on September the 25th. It will be free to start with in-game purchases. Mario Kart Tour was supposed to be available in March of 2019 until Nintendo delayed its release to give it a bit more polish. Now the gaming giant is finally ready to roll it out and has announced an official launch date for its mobile-friendly racing game, September the 25th. The Mario Kart Tour website even shows that pre-registrations are now open for both Android and iOS users, so they can be notified as soon as the game is ready to download. Very little was known about the game before Nintendo gave a few users the chance to test it out in a closed beta. Its Android and iOS pages now include a detailed feature list as well, such as race courses inspired by iconic real-world cities that rotate every 2 weeks. The game is free to start, which means most players will have to decide whether to spend money on microtransactions to unlock features or perhaps even characters. Those who have not written Mario Kart Tour off after reading microtransactions may want to follow its official account on Twitter. Nintendo has promised to release more details about the game as its release date does approach. And of course, this was a pretty big deal whenever it was announced. Mario Kart Tour, of course, being a really big name in the mobile space. I think that it definitely has a lot of potential. It is certainly not going to be the Mario Kart game that you remember on the DS, on the Switch. You aren't going to be, at least if the gameplay is telling enough for you, doing anything too intricate here. You can pretty much play with one hand and the occasional intervention from an index finger on the other hand. But at the same time, you know, whenever you were talking about games on mobile, stuff that you play for between 10 and 15 minutes at a time, 9 times out of 10, this is a pretty good way to kind of, you know, kill a couple of minutes regardless of what you may be doing. But if you do want to dive in and give it a shot, you can check it out right now on iOS and Android and pre-order it for its release on September the 25th, which will be here in less than a month. And of course, pretty cool to see it finally does have a definitive release date. But that rounds out today's episode of the Jampack Report. Of course, if you are brand new to the show, you can check it out 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So subscribe if you do enjoy the content that I bring to the table. And of course, check it out on podcast services around the world. You can follow me on Twitter at PrettyChillGuy, or you don't have to. I don't really care what you do. Yeah. But I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and peace.